Welcome to Uniquely Female Troubles. My name is Leslie Wells. I used to weigh 102 pounds more than I do now, and I want to make a video about how I made that change come about. And I'm going to go, well, before I start talking about that, I've talked about many personal things on this video. I've talked about my hymen. I've talked about having vaginismus. I've talked about the different R word and essays that I've experienced. I've talked about many personal things, but when I thought about making this video and I thought about actually saying the numbers of what I used to weigh, what I weigh now, and stuff like that, I felt it felt really scary. And I think it's so interesting that saying the actual numbers of what I used to weigh and telling you what I actually weigh now seemed so absolutely embarrassing when I have told you so many things that are embarrassing. And that just is a really good illustration about the shame that our culture causes people to have surrounding the whole subject of weight. So I want to go back to when I was really young. I was like 8-9 years old. And in our family, which it was a blessing, the kids were all skinny and we just ran around and played and we were like string beans. But most of the adults, well, not all of, maybe half the adults were about morbidly obese or obese. And that just seemed normal. Obviously, adults are a lot bigger than kids, right? But when I went to some of my friends' house, some of their moms, they could have traded clothes with them. And they're like 8 years old. I had never seen an adult so tiny. And I had other friends that had very small moms compared to my mom and my dad and most of the other grown-ups I knew. And in my mind, I called them miniature moms because it didn't seem like a normal thing. It just really seemed like that when you grew up, you got taller, which, I did. And you also got fatter. That just seemed like a normal thing, like part of becoming an adult in my mind. So that was kind of shocking when I first went to my friend's house and they had such little moms. I don't know, it was really weird to me. I just wasn't used to the idea that an adult could be the same size as a kid. So I got older, and when I got into high school, I weighed 116 pounds. And I thought I was fat. We talked about weight all the time. Me and my friends, we all were always talking about weight. Diets, we went on diets. And all of us wanted to lose weight. And looking back, none of us were overweight. We were different sizes. People come in a variety of sizes, but none of us needed to lose weight. We were normal weights. But I was around my mom and she was dieting off and on all the time. My aunts, it was just in the air. You couldn't even, and I feel like I just internalized the idea that I was overweight just because I was around adults who were overweight. And even though I wasn't yet, I felt like I was. And then when I did gain weight, it didn't feel that different. You would think if I hated the idea of being overweight so bad when I weighed 116 pounds, and as soon as I started gaining weight, I would be horrified and I would do something about it, but that's not what happened. And I think that's because even though I had never been overweight before, I had felt overweight for many, many years. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm not saying that's why I gained weight, because I followed the same pattern as most of the other adults in my family. Not all, but most. And that was I was thin as a child, and I was a normal weight as a teenager. And then I got married young, which a lot of us did. And then I gained weight. And a lot of people gain weight when they get married. But I was following in the footsteps of the other adults in my family, and I was overweight. And I was married by that time. And I don't even really remember what I weighed back then, but I definitely weighed a lot more than 116 pounds. And so I was living my life, and I thought, I should lose weight. Sometimes I tried to lose weight, but not very successfully. And the years went by, and 12 years went by. I was married 12 years when I got the incredibly amazing, wonderful news that I was pregnant. And I'd wanted to have a baby for a long time, but it wasn't happening. and it finally did. So I went to the doctor, and he weighed me. I weighed 222 pounds when I got pregnant. And my ex-husband was with me, and when we left, like, he didn't know exactly what I weighed. I don't even know if we had a scale, but he weighed a lot more than I did. I mean, for one, because he's a foot taller than me, so of course he weighed a lot more, but he was obese too. And so I'm 5'5", by the way, so 222 is definitely a lot for a person to weigh. But anyway, I was pregnant, and all of a sudden it was very important to me what I ate. I even forced my, it's so stupid. I don't like cheese in most settings. I mean, I like pizza. I mean, it would be a lot of detail to tell you where I like cheese and where I don't, but I mostly don't like cheese. But in the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, which of course was like my pregnancy Bible, like it is for a lot of people, they had a broccoli cheese soup recipe that they said it would give you everything your body needs for your baby. So I forced myself to eat the broccoli cheese soup, even though I don't even like cheese. And I got so grossed out by it, I don't even think I could eat broccoli again for a while. And I already didn't want to eat cheese, certainly not in a soup. So anyway, I was eating very healthy compared to what I was eating before I got pregnant. But I ended up gaining quite a bit of weight, and that was because I had a lot of edema, and I ended up with preeclampsia. And before they induced labor, I had been put on bed rest several times because of all the edema or the swelling in my legs. And I woke up one morning, my face was puffy, and they told me to look for these symptoms, and I had a bad headache. So they told me to come in, and I was 3 weeks from my due date. That was November 10th of 1992, and my due date was December 2nd. And I went to the obstetrician's office. They took my blood pressure, and they ended up admitting me to the hospital to induce my labor. I had preeclampsia. And if preeclampsia, I don't know if preeclampsia itself is dangerous, but eclampsia is very dangerous. And they want to make sure it never moves from preeclampsia to eclampsia. They don't want you to get any kind of eclampsia or, you can have seizures. It can be really bad. And so they admitted me to the hospital, and they gave me an IV, and it had magnesium in it. And the magnesium is supposed to help the preeclampsia. My blood pressure was high, and that's why they knew I had it. And my legs and arms and feet were so puffy. My face was all puffy, and I mean, my feet looked terrible. They looked like kind of like a doll's feet. Like, it's just like this round, like, I can't describe it. Like, normally you can see bones and veins and stuff in your feet. Well, I couldn't see anything like that. And I had what's called pitting edema, of course, which that is if you take your finger and push on your shin bone and let up after a few seconds, if there's still a pit there, that means you have a layer of edema between your skin and your shin bone, and that is showing that you do have some retained fluids in your legs. So I had my baby, and that's a whole nother story that I won't go into, but she was really healthy, and there was some ups and downs, of course, like there always are, but it was a really wonderful, exciting thing. So I got home. I actually had to stay in the hospital for a whole week, mostly because, well, the baby wouldn't eat. She wouldn't let me nurse her, and the baby got jaundice, and they thought she might have had an intestinal blockage, but she didn't. She just did not want to eat. And so she would scream and cry and like scratch my chest. It would take me like the first few days I couldn't feed her at all. And then finally it got to the point that if every time she opened her mouth to scream, if I stuck the nipple in, she would scream and fight it, but then she'd latch on and start nursing. But it was a really long, hard process. So all of that, and I was so glad I was in the hospital because there was a lactation specialist there. And they were monitoring her, making sure she didn't get dehydrated. I think they were giving her bottles of water. So anyway, I came home after a week, and I was still so swollen. But all of a sudden, it wasn't important anymore. And that's because I wasn't going to get preeclampsia anymore. And because the baby wasn't inside me anymore. And it couldn't hurt her, and it wasn't going to hurt me anymore. Well, I gained like 50 pounds when I was pregnant, something like that. And suddenly, after about 3 days after I got home, I had to pee, and I peed like I hadn't been in a bathroom for the last 8 hours. Then 15 minutes later, I had to pee really bad again. And again, it was like I hadn't been in a bathroom in like 8 hours. And what happened was my body was getting rid of all of that fluid. I lost over 50 pounds in 2 weeks. Yeah. And because it was just fluid, that's all it was. Actually, I think as far as actual pounds, I think I lost weight while I was pregnant. The weight I gained because I was eating so much healthier than before I got pregnant. So I got back down to about 220, around in there. And I wasn't really thinking about weight. I was thinking about my baby, and I was just living my life. I wasn't really thinking about weight. And one of the things that helped was moving down here to Florida, where I live, because up in Georgia, I was friends with some people that were really obsessed with weight. And then when I didn't realize how much it was bothering me. I was kind of doing the same thing. But then when I moved down here and went to a church where people weren't obsessed with weight, and I'm not saying everybody in the church up there was, but my particular friends were really weight conscious and talked about it and thought about it and was dieting all the time and stuff. And I was, kind of part of that. But when I moved down here, it was nice because the people down here weren't obsessed with weight. And so I was just not thinking about it as much as I used to, which was actually a big relief. So I just lived my life, and I ended up gaining some weight. I actually ended up weighing 250 pounds. That's how much I weighed for probably at least 15 years. And there was 1 or 2 times I went on a diet and I lost 30 pounds. Both times I lost 32 pounds, and I ended up gaining it back. And it seemed like an incredible waste of effort because I knew people that lost weight, but they always gained it back. And usually when you gain it back, you gain more than what you lost. So it's like you go through this huge monumental effort that lasts, takes a while to lose 30 pounds. And then you end up worse than you were before you started. So why bother doing it? And so I just thought, okay, I guess I'm just going to be 250 pounds the rest of my life. And I wasn't too happy about it, but I wasn't really upset about it. And one thing that has to do with it is I was in the cult. And the big thing with the cult was just that you kept your body covered up. And nobody was trying to look sexy. Nobody was thinking about what other people's body looked like. I wasn't part of the culture, even though I was influenced by it. But I was not influenced by it at all compared to, like, if I hadn't been in the cult. I just wasn't part of popular culture. So that made it easier to be overweight. And so a bunch of different things happened, and I left my ex, and then I left the cult. And my daughter and I moved in with my mom and dad, and I went to school, and I got a career as a medical coder, and I got a job at a hospital. Actually, okay, yeah, I did. Got a job at the hospital, and I worked there for 10 years, and I still weighed 250 pounds. And then I ended up having to go on disability because of psych problems that were caused by the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and a few other issues that I have that were caused by the trauma I went through when I was a child at the hands of 2 male relatives, and when I was in the cult, and when I was married. That really hurt me a lot. So I was home, and I went on vacation to see my sister. And when I was up there, my back started hurting so incredibly bad that I could barely function. The only thing I did was just sit as much as possible. When I had to walk, even when I had to just stand up, it hurt so bad. It was awful. And so when I came back home, I went to the doctor, and I had all these back issues. I was getting shots in my back, steroid shots in my back, and just it was terrible. And it got to the point, I almost couldn't take care of myself. My adult daughter was coming over once a week and like taking out the garbage, washing the dishes, which there weren't all that many for a whole week because I wasn't cooking. And going to the grocery store was a major ordeal. And I got scared because if you can't take care of yourself, if you can't do what they call the activities of daily living, which I could still shower and dress myself and do stuff like that, but I couldn't really, be self sufficient here in my home. And sometimes I got help with grocery shopping. And then I had to start using those carts that they have, those motorized carts. And I hated that. It was humiliating, to be honest. And so I was scared because you can end up in a nursing home. You could be 30 years old. And if you're too fat or overweight, I don't know what word people want to use. Some people hate the word obese. I kind of do. They hate the word overweight. And some people want to call themselves fat. And then other people find fat very offensive. So I'm just going to say, I guess, overweight. But anyway, if you're like 30 years old and you cannot take care of yourself because of how overweight you are, you will end up in a nursing home unless you have somebody else who wants to do it for you. And I don't have anybody like that. I certainly wouldn't ask my daughter to stop her life and take care of me because I gained so much weight. And during that time, the first 3 months after my back got messed up, I gained 30 pounds in 3 months because I was barely moving, but I was still eating. And so I weighed 280 pounds. I was almost 300 pounds, and that was actually really scary. And in the meantime, something else happened, and they came out with a new bariatric procedure. And that procedure is called the gastric sleeve. One thing I was really never wanted to have a gastric bypass, because a gastric bypass, it kind of rearranges your intestines, and it can have a lot of negative side effects. For instance, there's something called a dumping syndrome. And what that means is basically your body just dumps diarrhea out of you with almost no warning. And it can happen anytime, anywhere, any place. I didn't want that. And also, it can become infected. It has a higher death rate than a lot of other major surgeries. And I always wanted to avoid a bypass. And I had a friend that had it. She ended up with a colonoscopy. No, colostomy. Sorry, not a colonoscopy. Hopefully, we've all had those if we're over 50. I certainly have. But anyway, she ended up with I can't say a colostomy bag. And I thought, I do not want to do that. And so, but they came out with a new bariatric procedure called the gastric sleeve. And the reason it's called the gastric sleeve is, you know how your stomach is like a pouch? They cut off the pouch part and they cut off about 85-90% of your stomach. And they make your stomach basically into the shape of a sleeve or a tube. There's no big pouch. So you cannot eat very much at one time. And I decided to have that surgery. And it's a lot more safe than the gastric bypass because they do not touch your intestines. Like, you have a sphincter that attaches your esophagus into your stomach. They don't touch that. And then you have another sphincter where the stomach contents go from your stomach into your small intestines, and they don't touch that. So you're not going to have any kind of dumping syndrome or any issues that involve your intestines. And that sounded really good. So I had to do a lot of things to qualify for this surgery. One of the things I had to do, I had to go to an orientation meeting, which I did. And I had to go to see a dietitian. And the way, like, each insurance policy is different. You have to qualify for it. And I did qualify for it because of my weight. I was morbidly obese. I was over 100 pounds overweight. And I had some health problems that were directly related to being overweight. Type 2 diabetes. I had sleep apnea. And I had very bad arthritis. That's what was causing all that pain. And the weight was pulling on my back so much that's why it was hurting so bad. So I did qualify for it. I had to see a dietitian for 3 months, but they were 3 calendar months. And I had to see a doctor, the doctor that was going to perform the surgery, for 3 months. But again, they were 3 calendar months. I saw them at the end of May. I saw both of them in June. And I saw both of them in the beginning of July. I actually only spent 6 weeks with them, and I lost 15 pounds during that time, because that's another thing you have to do. If you can't show them that you're willing to put forth the effort to lose some weight before the surgery, they won't do it. Because it's not a good idea to have 85% of your stomach removed unless you're willing to change the way you eat. And it had really gotten to the point that it was ruining my life. It wasn't ruining my life before. I didn't like it, and I knew it was bad for me, but it wasn't ruining my life. But when I got to 280 pounds and my back was hurting so bad that I could barely move, it was ruining my life. And I knew that if I didn't do anything about it, it was going to ruin it even more. So I had the surgery, and it's a laparoscopic surgery, which what that means is they don't put this big incision in your stomach, your abdomen. They make these little holes. I had, I think, 5 little holes. So I didn't think it would hurt that bad. I was wrong. It hurt bad. They went in there with the laparoscopic tools. They put the tools in through those holes, and they did it. And he did remove part of my stomach, and I was really surprised how bad it hurt. And so, but I was really happy I did it anyway. And I was staying with my mom and dad at that time. This was about, I don't know, I cannot remember. It was either 2017 or 2018. And a lot of stuff's happened since then. My dad passed away, and before that he had dementia. So it wouldn't have been a good idea to try to stay with them after I had a surgery. But I was really blessed that I was able to stay with them. So after you have, a few days before you have the surgery, you have to start going on a sort of a fast. And they want you to drink this protein water. Now, each doctor has a different protocol, and it might have changed with time too. It always does. They figure out a better way to do things. So I wasn't eating for about 3 days before I had this surgery. I think I was on a clear liquid diet. I can't even really remember, but I know they wanted me to drink this horrible tasting protein water, and what was so gross about it, it was really, really sweet. I didn't like it at all, but I had to drink it, and I did. And then after I had the surgery, I was on a clear liquid diet, I think for like a week. I'm not really sure. But as soon as you have the surgery, I mean, you're not eating, and you just start losing weight like crazy. And it's amazing. Every time you get on the scale, it's like, oh my gosh, I lost 5 pounds, or wow, I lost 3 more pounds. And it's really great, but it's very painful. And then you go from a clear liquid diet to a liquid diet. And then you go to, I think the next stage is a soft diet, but you have to stay 2 weeks on each phase. And so you're eating so little. And then when you finally get to the point where you can eat things like scrambled eggs, and you have to start learning a whole new way to eat. Because if you eat too much, it is so painful. It's awful. I mean, it's a kind of pain I've never felt before, and which is kind of weird, because I've definitely, before I had the surgery, I definitely like gone out to a restaurant. The food was really great, and I ate so much I gave myself a stomach ache. That wasn't all that unusual, which is probably why I weighed 280 pounds. But this was a totally different kind of pain, and it was really worse than the pain I was used to from overeating. I mean, it hurt so bad. Another thing I had to get used to was I was not supposed to drink anything for 30 minutes before I ate, or when I ate, or 30 minutes after I ate. And it got to the point where I was able to take like 1 sip after I was done eating, just to kind of like wash my mouth out. And right now at this point, all these years later, I still don't drink while I eat, other than maybe 1 sip. But I don't worry about the half hour after or the half hour before. But it's really important that you don't fill your stomach up with liquid, and that you reserve that area of your body for food. Because if you're full of liquid and then you try to eat, you're just going to give yourself a terrible stomach ache, and you're not going to have any kind of nutrition. And that's the big problem with this surgery, is getting enough protein and enough of everything that you need. And I had to drink protein shakes, which tasted much better than that disgusting protein water, even though I got so sick of those that I stopped drinking them. And and the thing of it is it's really a thing of trial and error. So eventually you do get where you can eat regular foods again, but you're not allowed to have soda. And the reason you're not allowed to have soda is because of the carbonation. All those bubbles can actually stretch your stomach if you fill your stomach up with soda. And so they just said no soda. And I was pretty addicted to diet soda. I love diet soda. I love that kind of burn that you get. Ah, so good. That was really hard to give up. I missed it so bad. But I haven't had diet soda in years and years and years, and I don't miss it anymore. And I'm really glad. But one time I did taste some, and I was thought it would be so delicious and so wonderful, and it wasn't. It burned my mouth. I guess I had really built up a tolerance for that burning sensation without realizing it. But after I lost that tolerance, I don't even want to drink diet soda. And I certainly don't want to drink regular soda. I don't like sweet drinks at all. So anyway, another food I found out that I cannot eat, and I haven't eaten in probably 6 years, ever since I had it. I ate it twice, which is rice. And I used to love rice. But both times I ate rice, I got really nauseous, and the nausea built. It took like an hour, but it built and built and built over the time of about an hour, and then I ended up vomiting. And I did it again. I had rice again, and the exact same thing happened. And I have not had rice since then. And another thing they tell you to be careful with are chicken breast, pork chops, and steak, because those foods are very dense and they're hard on your stomach. But I can eat anything. I mean, I'm not going to eat rice or soda, diet soda, any kind of soda. But I can eat steak. I can eat any kind of meat I want. But it really is a trial and error. Like, you eat 3 bites of food and you think, okay, I can have 2 more bites. And you take 1 bite and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to die. It's awful. You really have to do a trial and error thing of figuring out like what to eat, when, how much. It's really like learning how to eat all over again. And and with this trial and error thing, every time you make an error, you are in so much pain, which is actually a really good motivation to learn to eat right and not push it. And I knew someone, and I think she had a psychological need to be overweight because she had a different gastric surgery. I can't even remember what. But anyway, she suddenly started drinking 2 or 3 milkshakes a day. You can get around this if you really want to not lose weight. She had surgery because she's always wanted to be thin. Obviously, we all do, pretty much. But then she like sabotaged it by drinking all those milkshakes, and she had lost a bunch of weight, but then she gained it back. And until she got back to the size she was, she just kept drinking milkshakes. It's not a magic bullet. It's not something that makes you lose weight in spite of yourself, but it definitely makes it a lot easier to lose the weight and keep the weight off. So the years went past, and I was learning my new way of being, and I was very, very happy that I lost 80 pounds. One thing I was disappointed in is I still had diabetes. And some people don't have diabetes anymore after this, but I did. And I still do. But I was very happy because when I was 280, I was on insulin, and I hated being on insulin. For me, the thing that was the worst about being on insulin was I was having this horrible hypoglycemic episodes where my blood sugar would drop really low. And it's one of the worst feelings in the world, and it kept happening. And now I don't have that I almost never have that because I'm not on insulin. I am on diabetes medicine, but it's not insulin. And insulin's a great thing. I mean, it's a necessary thing. It saves people's lives for people that have type 1 diabetes, which they also call juvenile diabetes, but I didn't have that. And it was very good to get off the insulin. And my back wasn't hurting anymore. And I will tell you, it's one of the best feelings in the world after feeling like you can barely walk without being in excruciating pain, to just walk get out of your car, walk into Walmart, grab a grocery cart, and walk all over the store and put the stuff in it that you want to buy. I mean, sometimes I almost feel like Superwoman. When I think about how I used to feel and what I could do back then with all that pain stopping me from doing what I wanted to do to now, it's really amazing. So for several years, I stayed right at around 200. And I would weigh myself periodically because I did not want to get over 200. And I was, it was okay to be like 201, 202, but I wasn't going to let myself get past that. And sometimes it would be 199, 198, or right at 200. I just wanted to stay in that little area. Well, then my dad got sick, and it was really hard. And gradually, even though I have diabetes, I let myself start eating anything I wanted. Chocolate, cake, ice cream, donuts, anything. And as much of it as I wanted. And I knew it was not healthy. And I was still taking my diabetes medicine, but I wasn't measuring my blood sugar. And I was kind of putting off going to the doctor because I didn't want to, I was just really doing bad all the way around. So my dad died. And then my doctor moved away. And I really liked her. And they put me with another doctor in the same practice. I didn't like her at all. That was before my dad died, and I kept canceling and rescheduling appointments with her. For one, I didn't like her. For two, I didn't want to have any commitments that I could avoid. And I didn't want to hear about my diabetes. I knew I was doing bad, and I knew I was hurting myself, but it's like, whatever, I don't care. And yeah, I told myself I didn't care, but I knew what would happen if they told me that I had like diabetic neuropathy, diabetic retinopathy, which one of them it damages the nerves in your legs. And then that's why people eventually sometimes have to get their legs or their feet amputated because of diabetes. I mean, I worked in a hospital, and I know what diabetes could do to people. It's bad. It is real bad. It's not just a matter of like dying sooner, which you do, but you're going to really suffer before you die. That's what, when we're young, we don't really think about. We just, oh, well, maybe I'll die when you're like 20, you think, well, maybe I'll die when I'm 70 instead of 80, big deal. Well, what you don't realize, maybe you will die when you're 70 instead of 80 if you're doing certain things like what I was doing with the food or smoking or other really unhealthy things. And you're not going to just drop dead when you're 70 instead of dropping dead when you're 80. You're going to suffer. You're going to have your toes cut off. I did so many charts like this. Like first the person comes in and they remove their toes because they have some kind of like thing that just won't heal. But then still won't heal. And so then they cut off your foot. Then they cut off your leg below the knee. Then they cut off your leg above the knee. And I didn't want to have that happen to me. You can go blind. You can go into kidney failure and have to be on dialysis. It's just really terrible what this disease does to people. So anyway, I went to a new doctor, and she measured my A1C. My A1C was 9.6. And if anybody knows about diabetes, they know that is a really, really bad A1C. So she did a few things. She spent a lot of time with me. And one of the things she did is she said I had to come see her every single week. Well, I had never had a doctor do that. It was like she had her mind made up that she wasn't going to let me do this to myself. And I realized I don't want to do this to myself. I really want to be healthy. And I had used my dad's death and my dad's sickness kind of as an excuse. I really don't know if it was an excuse or a reason, and I don't really even care right now because things are different now. One of the best things she did for me is she gave me these things called a continuous monitoring glucose measurement thing. And what it is they put it on your arm. It's this thing, and it like sticks a needle into your arm, and you wear it for a whole week. And you have to have an app on your phone, and it updates every 5 minutes, and it tells you what your blood sugar is. And that was so revolutionary for me. It's like, okay, I ate a cookie. Wow, my blood sugar went up. Or I ate some broccoli and it stayed the same. Or, you start noticing it's really hard to conceptualize the connection, even though you know intellectually. It's really hard to conceptualize, if I eat this cookie, this is what's going to happen, because you don't feel any different. That is what's so insidious about high blood pressure and diabetes. You don't feel any different. Even though your blood pressure could be so high, it could be getting you close to a stroke. Sometimes people end up in the ER because they have terrible headaches that are caused by high blood pressure, and they didn't even know they have high blood pressure. If you're having that bad of a headache that you go to the hospital because of your blood pressure and you didn't even know you've had it, it's been high for a really, really long time, and it does damage to your body. And the same thing with diabetes. A lot of people have it and they don't even know it. And then they go to the doctor, they go to the hospital for whatever reason, and they find out, wow, I have diabetes, and it's really bad. So anyway, in 3 months, she took my blood sugar. She measured my A1C again, and it went all the way down from 9.6 to 6.6. I was so happy, and so is she. And also during that time, I decided to try to lose some more weight, because I actually was disappointed that I only lost 80 pounds. I did want to lose more weight. And it's been, I think it took me about 6 months. It might have been a few more, might have been 7 or 8. But I lost 22 more pounds by dieting. And I've spent a lot of energy and time researching how to cook things that are low carb. And my biggest goal is to keep my A1C at a really low level, maybe even lower than 6.6. But my other big goal is not to gain any weight, but maybe lose more weight. I'll never be back to what I was. My goal isn't to be 116 again. And I think that would be a very unrealistic goal. My big thing now that I really need to work on is exercise, because exercise is something that I absolutely hate to do. The things I love to do are read, write, make art, hang out with family, watch YouTube videos, and none of those things involve getting off the couch, unfortunately, or not sitting at my desk. I write at my desk and I make art at an art table. All of those involve sitting, or I don't have a standing desk. I could do that. But I don't enjoy exercise. I don't enjoy being active. It's just never been something that I've liked, and I have to force myself to start doing it. That's the next step. And, I'm 63 years old. And the older I get, the more important it is that I take care of my health. And I know that. And that's why I want to lose weight. It has nothing to do with meeting the cultural expectations of what people should be. And it never was about that. Not except for when I was in high school. It was very much about that when I was in high school, when I didn't even need to lose weight. But I thought I did. And now that I don't weigh 280 pounds and I weigh 178 pounds, does that mean I'm a good person now, or I'm a worthy person? No, I'm the same person I was. I have no more value and worth. I could lose 60 more pounds. Look, let me see. That would put me at 118 pounds. Would I be a better person or more worthy of respect and regard if I was what this culture says we're supposed to be? No. And neither are you. It doesn't matter how much you weigh as far as how other people regard you. And some people actually act like that people who are overweight are hurting them because they have to look at us. Well, tough luck. Look the other way. My weight is my problem. It has nothing to do with anybody else except for the people that love me. Of course, it has to do with them. But I am not doing anything that is affecting other people. It's affecting me and my family. And if you are overweight, or if you're thinking about other people that are overweight, I don't care if somebody weighs 100 pounds, 200, 300, 400, 800, 1,000. That person still has a soul. That person still has a mind. That person still has a heart. If they're a good person, they're a good person. Whether you weigh 150 pounds or 1,500 pounds, you're still a good person. The thing that the more obese person, they can't have a good life. It gets to the point where it very much affects the quality of your life. I mean, I don't know if we've all have, but I have seen videos and things of people that weigh an incredible amount of pounds. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, weigh a very high amount and they're so limited on what they can do. And a lot of times they kind of live in their bed, which would be awful. And I just feel so bad for people like that because they're inside of a trap. And I'm so glad. And when I would look at that, I was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get that way? And I would see people, like one thing that happens to people from being overweight is that it can cause you to have breathing problems. And the reason it's causing you to have breathing problems is your abdomen is actually pushing up on your lungs. And you can see some people going around that are very overweight and they're on oxygen. And sometimes that's why it is, not always, but that can actually, it affects every part of your body. It's really bad for people. And, I agree with the fat positivity movement. I feel like nobody should be thought as lesser than based on weight. But I don't agree with it that it doesn't affect your health because I know how much it has affected my health. And one thing I will say, a lot of people say, well, I weigh 500 pounds and I'm healthy. All my numbers and everything are good. Yeah, you're 30. You're 25. Come back and tell me about that when you're 60. Come back and tell me about that when you have to have your knees replaced. I had to have my knees replaced in my 40s. And a lot of that was my weight. It does run in my family. We have a lot of arthritis in our family. Both my parents had both their knees replaced, and I've had both my knees replaced. But it's not normal to have your knees replaced in your 40s. That usually happens when you're in your 60s, like I am now. So I totally agree with the fat positivity movement that we should never look down on people based on their weight. But I don't agree with the idea that it doesn't affect your health negatively because I know that it does. Between doing medical charts for 10 years of the people that were in the hospital I worked at, and between my own life experience and the life experience of people I know. And I don't know who's going to watch this. I don't know if you have a weight problem. If you do, don't beat yourself up. That's the most important thing, not to beat yourself up. And another thing to try not to do is what they call yo-yo dieting. Like for about 15 years, I weighed 250 pounds. And if I would have lost 50 pounds, gained 60, lost 50, gained 60, lost 50, I might have even been less healthy. That's what I've heard. I'm not an expert on that. I just never felt like it was worth the effort. And the only kind of diet I've actually ever been on is a low carb diet and counting calories. And I never tried what they call the South Beach diet. I was never in Weight Watchers, I don't think. I think I might have went to Tops once. But I never wanted anybody to tell me what I could eat. I just wanted to find out how many calories I could eat. And if I decided to use a lot of them on something that tasted really good, that had a lot of calories that I really wanted, and I was willing to cut calories and other things I ate that day, then fine. I hate the idea of somebody telling me what I can eat and what I can't eat. But I do try to eat very low carb. I don't eat sweets anymore, hardly ever. And I don't eat chips anymore. When I want something really crunchy, I eat pork rinds, which are not healthy, but they have no carbs because that's meat. Meat does not have carbs in it. So, and I found workarounds and I found things that I love that are good. And another thing I found is stevia is a natural sweetener. And I've done all kinds of things with stevia and different extracts to make things that don't have any sugar in it taste really good and have flavor, like plain yogurt and different things like that. So there's so much on YouTube about how to cook low carb and low calorie alternatives of food that you like, and ideas. There's probably a lot of ideas that neither one of us have ever heard of that people have really done a good job experimenting and discovering, and that's all out there for people to find when they want to do something about that. And you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. I really believe that. But you know what? Even if you don't do it, I care about you just as much. And even if the most important thing, I think, really, to be honest, is to not hate yourself because you're overweight. No matter how much overweight you are, don't hate yourself. You don't deserve that. You don't deserve that from yourself, and you also don't deserve that from anybody else. I heard things about my weight when I was married. And even though he was just as overweight as I was, but I heard things about it and put downs and stuff, and there's no reason for that. You're a human being. And it doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, you're a human being. And the reason that it's important to have a healthy weight is to be healthy, not because it affects your value as a person. And thank you. Thank you for listening to this. And I hope maybe I said something that can help somebody or inspire someone. And thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment. I would love to know about things about weight in your life, and that in this culture it's almost impossible to not think about weight a lot. And I feel like that's one of the toxic things of this popular culture that we're in right now. I don't know if it's ever going to change. And you know, beauty is a social construct. There have been times when beauty, thin people would be considered unattractive and more voluptuous women were considered attractive. There is a society in Africa right now that men don't want to marry women unless they're fat. And they actually overfeed their daughters when they get to a certain age. And I saw a documentary about that. I can't even tell you the name of it. I'm sorry. But so it's a complete social construct. There's nothing inherently beautiful or ugly about different kinds of bodies. It's just what we are taught to believe is beautiful and ugly. And so you are not ugly. You are not ugly, period. I'm not ugly. I've spent most of my life feeling like I was ugly. I could give you a whole big list of things that I think are wrong with the way I look. But I'm just trying to throw that away and throw it in the garbage where it belongs. And I hope you can do that too. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye.